Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of that thing we call Till Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter like we are each and every single week. We are a couple of minutes late this week, but you know, that's how life goes sometimes. Sometimes you got to do graphics for the show that are important, damn it. Dare I say important, because we need visual aids for the show, for all of our viewers and all of our listeners here on YouTube. Your comments, your questions, your concerns all come in real time, even if you're just saying hello, like Douglas Barnes. Hi, everybody, LGM. So it's the best way to interact with the show in real time. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibanez, we are holding it down. I am here in Los Angeles, California, like I always am, where it has been kind of cold, kind of rainy, kind of gloomy, and my co-host is back on the East Coast where you have wildfires and all kinds of crazy stuff. Ibby, I tweeted out before, it's like a Freaky Friday between the two coasts. I don't know what's going on, but this is not how it should be in the springtime here or there. So how you holding up?
John, we're doing pretty well over here. I figured I would rock the burnt orange shirt today to kind of signify what the outside looks like. I was joking with you off air. It seems like I'm in an episode of Breaking Bad with how hazy everything is out there. But it's crazy. It's wild, and hopefully, the majority of people are doing well out there, because I know it's a little bit dangerous for those who might have breathing issues and might be a little bit older. So for me, I'm okay. I'm a little scratchy in the throat, but it's crazy to walk outside. Just feel like there's like this huge bonfire going on without the fun of s'mores. But
it sucks. I mean, all jokes aside, I am very, very used to wildfires living out here in California for the last 4 years or so. And we usually get them a little bit later in the year, and kind of the midsummer. Yeah. And, it's a bummer, man. The first time I experienced it, it was just very difficult to see. Sometimes it kind of burns your eyes. It burns your throat. It's hard to breathe. So for you and for everybody who's back in the New York area, and I guess it's also affecting, obviously parts of New Jersey and Connecticut and Pennsylvania. If you're in that area, of course, everybody up in Canada who's dealing with it directly, be safe, be careful, follow the guidelines. You're going to be like, oh, it's just a little smoke. It's not that bad. No, it's pretty bad. Keith's saying he nailed it. It looks like Zool is about to come for all of us. I do want to say something before we get into the show. We have a little bit of housekeeping that we need to get to. James Dowling with the segue saying, hi, bye. I'll give it a listen tomorrow at work. So we know that so many people watch us live on YouTube, and so many people watch us live on Twitter, but a lot of people wait till the following day and they listen to this show as an audio podcast. And we have to mention, and you can see the logo up above my head in the corner, Chop Sports has been acquired by the Premier Podcast Network. So that is the new home. Nothing changes. You'll still be able to listen to our old episodes. You'll still be able to listen to us each and every single Thursday morning, but we just have a new, official home, Ibby. So it goes from Chop Sports to Premier Podcast Network. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that even though that logo changed, nothing's changing. We're still going to be live every Wednesday, and our podcast will still drop accordingly every Thursday morning. Ibby, that said, a lot of stuff to talk about with our New York Mets, and I think the best way to start right now is with an overarching view. People have a lot of things to say. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of opinions about a lot of things that we have going on. But I tweeted this out the other day. The Mets are now just over a third of the way through the season. So with the Mets here now wrapping up a third of the season, what would you grade our New York Mets after 1/3 of the year?
C-, maybe. I could probably go lower if I wanted to, because of expectations and things along those lines. But like I said, it's third of the way through. It's like you wanted more. You expect. Like I've brought this up multiple times. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but this team was a lot. I think I checked it the other day. Actually, I think this team around this point was somewhere in the area of 17 games over 500. This time last year. So clearly you can see that there's a big difference between the two teams and how they were playing, and pitching played a role in that, and the inconsistency when it comes to the offense. But again, we've mentioned how those two things play off each other, and I think some stubbornness has also creeped in to an extent with certain things, which we'll talk about today. But yeah, I would probably put it in the low C's, even potentially a D based off of expectations and how things have gone. Because look, I don't think anyone in here, me, you, or anyone in the chat or anyone listening, thought that when we were 61 games through the season that this team was going to be one game under 500.
No, I mean, look, that's a good way to put it. Doug Barnes saying he's got a good one. Douglas Barnes saying, is apathetic a grade? Patty and NYC, something similar. My grade is
Meh.
like,
Yeah.
Carlos Ortiz saying it's a C. David, I agree with Ibby saying C minus D plus in my book. I had a sort of similar feel to what you just said. My point on Twitter was the Mets are a solid C because they are fundamentally average. And this is after 60 games when they were 30-30. Everything says average about that. Everything shows them being average. And I said, look, if your grade on average is a C plus, if your grade on average is a C minus, I'm willing to give you that. Mine is right in the middle. Give me a C. And I said, if you say anything other than that, you're crazy. Now, your grade and the way that you posed it is something that I had a little bit of a back and forth with Matt Williams, who was a guest on the show last week. And he said, if you go expectations versus reality, it's lower than a C. If you just go by what the outcome has been so far, a C, an average grade, is fine. To which I said, that's a fair point. So I'll give you the same thing. That's a fair point. I don't like grading expectations versus reality. This is me personally. I don't like grading that before the season is over. To me, I just think there's too much left to say, oh, well, this is what they were expected to be. Look, has this Mets team shown us that they're going to go win 10 in a row? Certainly not. But if this team does win 10 in a row starting tonight, well, then, they might find themselves in a different position. We're going to all look up and go, oh, look, they're right in line with what we expected them to be after, a little over a third of the season. So for me, I like to reserve the expectations versus reality until the end of the season or until it's, a foregone conclusion. Look, we've had plenty of Mets seasons in our lifetime where the season's over in September, or the season's over in late August. You want to start, doing that, which I don't think is going to be the case this year, but you want to start grading stuff. Even on my Jets show, we've had a lot of really bad Jets seasons where we're talking about the draft in October. So, there is a time and a place for it, and for me, it's not yet. But that said, we want to know what you guys think. A lot of people have already thrown in their grades. Shay saying it's a C. Keith Blacknick saying 0.0, which is basically, it's right there. Like, that's it. 0.0. They're not in the negative. They're not in the positive. That's how I'm interpreting that. If Keith is going to tell me that that's not exactly what he was saying, then he can let me know. Really, it's a C minus. They aren't playing to their potential. That's fair. Carlos Ortiz saying C at this time. As an educator, you have to grade where they are at this point, which is exactly what I was trying to say. And then we have Carlos Ramos back in the chat. I'm not going to ignore comments. I don't. Avoiding accepting reality 101 with John Saponaro. 101 also the amount of games. It's the amount of games that the Buck Showalter led Mets won last season. That's what that was. So Ibby, no, that said, happy to have Carlos back. Look, they are in the midst of a big series with Atlanta, and keep those grades coming in. If anybody is in the chat and hasn't, chimed in on it, we do want to hear, but everybody right now is saying mediocre at best, basically. Ibby, they're in the midst of a big series with Atlanta. Last night looked like we were going to get some magic. It didn't quite go our way. Last night is the kind of loss, Ibby, that if you're, 40 years old and younger, you kind of expect the Mets to have against the Atlanta Braves. It's just one of those like dagger in the gut kind of losses that we're used to.
Atlanta. Yeah.
And I also think that game, though, would feel a lot different. It would suck because you want to beat your division rival and your biggest rival this season. I think that game would feel a little different if the Mets weren't playing as mediocre as they are right now. Because that's a game you could lose. Sometimes you lose a game where, you hit a little bit, but you don't hit enough. You pitch a little bit, but you don't pitch enough. But this game feels worse because of the magnitude, because the Mets are now a game under 500, because they're now 6 back in the division, because they're, if the season ended today, not in a wild card spot. So is that how you feel about this? Because I think otherwise it's not this devastating loss. It's a loss that is just kind of sucks, but happens over the course of 162. But I will admit, it feels worse because this series feels big because it's an opportunity for the Mets to gain ground and at the very least not lose any ground.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly there, where it's like you want this team to do better, and even though they've been in this up and down funk, the fact that they're facing the team that's in front of them, you can gain ground and you can try to establish something. Like that's a well planned. I said this, like I've been like people have been I've been in and out on Twitter. I haven't been posting as much. I'm here and there in certain spots. I've been posting a little bit in the Facebook community of our page. And last night, like I saw them every game. And I just said last night's game was just the definition of frustration. Like that was just it was annoying. It was a frustrating game to watch because it's like they're up 4-1, they lose the game. The things that happen along the way, which we can hit on a little bit, but it's like it's also the fact that they only had 4 hits. And it was overall how everything went last night was just honestly for me it kind of summed up where this team is up until this point. Like it's been very back and forth, up and down. You're there, yeah, you're doing good. No, you're coming back down. And all of a sudden you end up with a loss. It was frustrating to watch that game last night just because you had it and then it just slowly but surely slips away and then you walk away with that loss. So frustration was like my number one word that really came up for me last night in my description when I was, breaking down the game last night.
Yeah, and Douglas Barnes saying, Ibby, don't be getting that eye gunk everywhere. Saw you wiping your
terrible.
eye. Is that from your allergies? And I'm sure that's not made better by the smoke-filled city that you live in.
No, I just actually got back from the doctor. He gave me some drops that are going to help me over the next week. But my allergies have been absolutely brutal. That's why I'm rocking the glasses for the first time on the show, just to try and take away. I did mention to Douglas as a joke. It was in my Amazon cart. I thought about getting an eye patch and just keeping it on for the show, but I say no. I'll just put the glasses on and then we'll go from there. See how I do. But yeah, I'm getting through it. I'm dealing with it. I'll make sure I don't get my gunk everywhere. Apologies for that one.
Ibby is officially having his Bob Costas moment. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Bob Costas at the Olympics
red eyes.
with just the most pink eye anybody's ever had in the history of humanity. Carlos Ramos saying, say no to Twitter. Life is so much happier that way. And I have really noticed that Carlos has been a little bit off Twitter, and I think that makes sense. I've interacted some. I have been myself on Twitter, but I also have turned notifications off on Twitter just because, I try not to get sucked into the fray. And It's a lot easier when you look down and there's a notification. You're like, oh, what is that? And then you're like, oh, I have to defend myself now because I'm a loudmouth. And so if you turn off the notifications, it's actually pretty sweet. I think that's what I'm going to I think that's what I'm going to do going forward. So I'll still be active, but
so basically speaking your shit and be like, I don't care what this guy says. I'm just keep going.
It's not that I'm going to avoid people. Like I'm not muting the conversations. I'm not turning comments off. It's just, I've always interacted kind of on my own time, but sometimes it's tricky. You're sitting around doing nothing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, here's a couple of alerts. Let me check and see what they are. And you're like, I really didn't have the time for this. I shouldn't be reading this nonsense. So this brings me to another good point. And I knew we would get to it eventually, but I think now, since we're in the throes of talking about the series, it's a good time to bring it up. Yeah. David saying, what do you guys think of Pete doing what he did after the home run? Was it worth doing a taunt to a team that's the leader in your division and you're not as consistent? So I will go to you first because I kind of made some of my comments known on Twitter, ironically enough, but you go ahead and take it.
I would say that I don't have a problem with it because I coach kids too. It's about respect. I get that. But at the same time, I am all about telling them baseball's meant to be fun. It's meant to be competitive and spots like that. So when a team is slumping like the Mets have been from an offensive standpoint in terms of consistency, like I get what you're saying there, David, but I also could say I think I looked at that as something as a way for them to really get to spark the team. Like it's like, talk your shit, you hit a bomb, guy hung one there, you hit it. Like I don't have an issue with it. Yeah, it sucks that that the Braves came back and they won. You want to call that karma? I mean, I know the point that you're going to make, John. I'm not going to take it from you. I'm going to let you speak your part because I did see your tweet because it's the same way on the other side for what they do. But no, I don't really have that much of an issue of it. Like, I'm all about talk your shit, hit a bomb. Like, you don't like it, don't serve it up. It's as simple as that, and it goes both ways. If certain players on that team, like I said, I'm not going to steal your point, want to do what they do, it is what it is. Do a better job. That's it. Like, so I don't have an issue with it, not a problem. And I would hope that I'm hoping that I can see more shit talking from the Mets. That means that they're actually scoring some runs.
Yeah, I mean, look, you said you saw my tweet. A lot of people in this chat that watch the show and listen to our show follow me, so I'm sure that they've seen it as well. But if you do follow me and you do listen to this show and you watch this show, you know that I like celebration. I think a bat flip is cool. I think you can spike the bat. I think, I think there's some stuff, obviously, that kind of goes past that and you're doing some really awful things. And it's kind of like, oh, this is a little too much, right? You don't want to be like, throating guys,
right?
Like the Undertaker and stuff like that. Maybe that's a little too much. It's a little too showy. But I think if you pimp home runs, it's no problem. I think if you're gonna hump the barricade like Pete does when he's all pumped up, there's no problem there. I also found it strange that some people were like, "Oh, well, he got into the dugout and was talking shit." It's like, well, dude, that's sometimes where you're going to talk the shit, right? Like,
right.
In other words, like, you're not going to talk shit on the field. Like, if Pete was like, throw it again on the field, the benches would have cleared. So when you get to the dugout and guys are gassing you up, that's kind of your moment to be like, yeah, man, throw it again. Throw that thing again. Plus, they're facing the ERA leader who gave up 4 home runs all season. He just gave up 2 home runs in the inning on hanging breaking balls.
You're fired up, yeah.
I know that Pete only hit the 1 home run, but Pete also just missed 2 other home runs off of him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just getting the ball in on the bat and just getting the ball off the end of the bat. Like, Pete was locked in. Yeah. Pete had a good game relative to the fact that he only got the 1 hit. You know what I mean? Like, Pete looked not like the guy who was slumping and flailing all over the place. Pete kind of looked like he was locked in. So a lot of people trying to sort of chiming in. Carlos Ortiz saying Pete is trying to get the team riled up, which I totally agree with. Mm-hmm. Chris Ram saying, I don't mind the passion at all. Yeah. Douglas Barnes saying, I love talking shit, but if you don't win, you look like a schmuck. And then Shay saying, it's worth is the taunt worth it? Sure, why not? But it will backfire if you don't win. And when the Braves took the lead, they gave it right back to us. And that brings me to the final point in this, which is what you were just saying as well. Look, if you're going to dish it out, you have to be able to take it. And I got to be honest, I don't want to make this about me and on Twitter and stuff, but since we were just joking about it, like, I say a lot of stuff on Twitter, but I don't run and hide. My name is on everything. I don't mute conversations. I don't block people unless they get like really disrespectful or something like that. Yeah. Then I block them if it's like real gross or something. But like, I get after it. And I think it's the same right there. It's like, look, if you're going to taunt, throw that pitch again. Okay, well then, you know what? When the Braves took the lead, there's a lot of throw that pitch again, and there's going to be T-shirts. There already are.
Yep.
So, listen, I don't have a problem with it, but I don't want to hear that the Mets have a problem with it. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I don't want to hear the Mets, I like some of that anonymous stuff, and we don't know if that's true or not, the stuff about Marcus Stroman.
Well, Pete did say on the Foul Territory podcast that whole anonymous thing was BS. He did call that out and say that it was nonsense. So, again, that's just media fodder and nonsense that's put out there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And I believe Pete on that one, but I don't want to hear any of that. Anonymous, not anonymous. I don't want to hear that. If you beat a guy, you beat a guy. If if a guy beats you, he beats you. It's what it is. If you want to talk it up, but be prepared for the repercussions.
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
The Mets deserve to get it right back. I loved it when it happened. I thought it was great. But I also thought the Mets deserved it. I don't want to see it happen. I want the Mets to win that game and it to not be a thing. But the Mets deserve to get it back. I will say there are some, as there is with every fan base, there are some despicable fucking people.
My God. I know what you're about to say.
On Braves Twitter.
Yes.
There were people saying, hey, I would like to do an awful sex crime to Pete Alonso's wife. There were people saying, Pete should have passed away. I'm trying to be very careful with my language here
Yes.
because I don't want to get censored on YouTube. Pete should have passed away in that car crash. Hopefully next time he'll wind up in the hospital. And that's like, yo, even the pitcher that he said it to was like, man, if I hit a home run that far off somebody, I'd say the same thing.
Yeah.
And then you're in the comments saying shit like that, which is just, that cannot happen. Mets fan, Braves fan, Yankees fan, Boston Red Sox, Premier League, MLS, NHL, NBA. That shit is disgusting. And that shit cannot fly.
This isn't even a Mets thing. I've always said for the longest time, like, the idea of rooting for injury on players or disgusting acts, like, it's like, nowhere, like, I need to just put it in my bio because it's like, this place isn't real. Like, stop treating it like stop saying things, like, treat it as if you would actually with a person. Like, would you say this to a person's face? This is the same thing I teach my kids in health when we talk about social media. Like, would you actually say this to a person's face?
Absolutely.
The odds are you would not say it. So why do you think it's okay just because you're behind a keyboard that it's okay to say it? I get the anonymity and all this stuff, but still, like, realize what you're saying. And before you even hit send, read it back and say, ooh, I should not say something like this, and erase it. Don't put that out into the, like, there's no point. It's absolute stupidity to put stuff like that. And then you have the nerve to go private so you're like, oh, everyone's ragging on me. I'm just gonna go private now. I'm gonna avoid all this hate and then delete tweets. It's like, don't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
You want to delete something, delete your Twitter. Go away.
Save yourself. Save yourself from yourself. I mean, everybody obviously agreeing with this. Patty and NYC saying horrible. Shay saying, yeah, people take it a little bit too far on Twitter, to put it mildly.
Very
mildly. Chris Ram saying that's horrendous. Carlos Ortiz saying that's too far. Classless fans, plain and simple. I mean, like, that's dumb. Just, and that's the problem. And, you know,
but it's in every fan base. So I don't want to come across like we are like protecting the Mets fans, because we know that there's plenty of shit in our own fan base as well.
Absolutely. But it's just, you know, it reminds me of something I've always said to people about comedy, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I think it's topical for what we're talking about. So for everybody here in the comments, bear with me, still a baseball show. But one of the biggest problems with comedians now is that a lot of people come out and they try to do stuff for the sake of shock value. They try to be the next Anthony Jeselnik. And what they don't realize about Anthony Jeselnik is that, one, he is a very, very, very brilliant guy. Like, he is a smart dude outside of the fact that he is a brilliant comedy writer. The other part of it is he is a very genuine, introspective, thought-provoking kind of guy who is always thinking about, like, okay, I'm going to make this horrible joke, but what's the reason for the joke? I'm going to say this thing, but why am I saying it? What is this poking fun at? Why is this? So he says a lot of things, but he's very rarely doing it to just get a rise. And the other part of it is that it's funny. And so you get a lot of people, though, that think they're Anthony Jeselnik, think they're going to say something that's shocking and that it's going to be, oh, this is hilarious. It's not. It's just disrespectful, disgusting, you know, racist, homophobic, transphobic, whatever it might be. Like, add it to the list. It's all of these things. And then there is no punchline and there is no sake of the joke. And I think a lot of people on Twitter do that. Do I think these people who are tweeting this stuff about Pete Alonso from last night, do I think they mean it? Some of them probably do because they're terrible people, but most of them probably don't. They're doing it to get traction. But it's like, dude, you have to understand what you're saying. You can't be out there like, oh, he should have passed away in that car crash. Like, oh my God, because he said to a pitcher, throw that pitch again, I'm going to hit another home run. It's not you. It's not your brother. It's not your dad. It's not your, like, it has no bearing on your life. Like, every day I want the Mets to win. If the Mets don't win, I shut off the TV and I go about my life. Yeah, and these guys are out here like saying stuff as if it has some kind of bearing on them. Like, Pete Alonso walked into your house and beat the hell out of your dad, and you're like, I'm going to get this guy. He hit a home run in a baseball game. Yeah. And then was like, throw it again so I could do that again. And they're like, this guy's a piece of shit. Like, what?
So somebody put it, I'm not going to, again, not to go on tangents and go off topic, but we do mention wrestling here and again, but like there's something going on in wrestling that people know, CM Punk and everything. He did put out a message at one point where he was talking about how people on Twitter, have to get beyond these parasocial relationships that they think they have. Tribalism is a thing. You want your team to win. You root for your team. You want your team to succeed and things like that. But the point he was making was like, because he's involved in it, he's like, you don't know me. You don't know the other people. You assume things. At some point, you just have to step back and, log off and touch grass. And look, he's a very hot button topic within the space right now. Some people love him, some people hate him, but it was a point that was well taken. It's like, yeah, this place isn't real. Step back. Know that there's a reality. Go out there and fucking do something else. Don't say something stupid.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, we went on a little bit of a tangent. Thank you for everybody for taking that ride, but I think it's important to discuss in the larger landscape of what we were talking about. But Douglas Barnes saying Twitter sucks. Duh. Let's get back to Vogelback sucking. Followed up by Patty and NYC saying, I want to talk about why Vogie is the only consistent thing, and Narvaez versus Alvi, and why Vientos is being benched. That's actually where I want to go next. Sit tight. Douglas Barnes said this earlier, by the way, which I think is hilarious. Maybe Vogie should hump the air, which is totally spot on and fantastic. Ibby, I think we should do something we don't normally do.
Okay.
Which is, we're under 30 minutes, but I think we should go into the break now.
Okay.
And once we come out of the break, we're going to talk about Vogelback. We're going to talk about Vientos. We're going to talk about Narvaez coming back and Nito being DFA'd and Alvarez and all this stuff. So I think now's a good time to put a pin in the conversation and come right back talking about all of that stuff. So for everybody who's watching for the first time, and there's a lot of you out there, first of all, hit that like button if you like what you're listening to.
Please hit the like.
We will be right back. This is just a 10-second ad spot that we need for the audio version of this show. I saw Carlos's tweet from earlier, or comment from earlier. No, it will not be a 10-minute ad break now that we've switched networks. I promise. Shay saying Vogelback forced an early break. Is there nothing he can't do? Yes,
hit a fastball.
The bat or hit a fastball. So, John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, till Mets do us part. We will be right back. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Just like that, we are back. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, till Mets do us part. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Twitter. All of your comments on YouTube come in real time, so it's the best way to interact with the show. If this is your first time watching us, we go live every Wednesday at right around 5:30, barring something unforeseen. Today, we were about 10 or 12 minutes late. Apologize for that. We're doing some graphics and doing some other things for the show that we'll get into in a moment. If you can't watch us live, or you can only catch some of the show, you can watch the entire thing as soon as we end the broadcast, which will live forever on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Till Mets Do Us Part. If you subscribe and turn notifications on, you will never, ever, ever miss an episode. And then, of course, you can listen to this show starting tomorrow morning, all courtesy of the Premier Podcast Network. Ibby, I'm going to try to not screw that up. For years, it has been the Chop Sports Network. Chop Sports Network has now been acquired by Premier Podcast Network, and that is the new podcast home of Till Mets Do Us Part and my other show, The Goddamn Jets, in case anybody is a fan of both teams like I am. But that said, there is a lot of stuff to talk about with the Mets as it relates to a couple of players in particular. Daniel Vogelback, Tomas Nido, Omar Narvaez, and Francisco Alvarez. So, I got to ask you, Ibby, where do you want to start with this conversation? Because I think there's a few ways to kind of, I don't know, there's a few ways to unpack this, because one situation kind of begets the other when you talk about Vogelback and Nito and Narvaez. So where do you want to go with this?
I say we just go right. You go right for the snake's head. You go right to the top, and you go what everyone is pissed off and bothered about, and that is what goes together, and that is Daniel Vogelback.
Is that this?
It is Daniel Vogelback, his 165 average since the 1st of May. 1 home run, 5 RBIs with a 545 OPS. For those that were asking before, it seems as though Vogelback is in the lineup today because he has very limited, I think it was like 16 or 17 at bats against the starter tonight. So I think he has like a 333 average, but I think it's only like 4 hits or something like that. So I think that's the reason why, to answer the question as to why he's in the lineup again. But I think we start there because I think it kind of builds on itself of Vogelback and Vientos and things along those lines. So I think that's where we should start it.
I do want to shout out Keith, who said I should be on a Mets fan advisory board Zoom meeting right now, but this show is more important. Thank you. So much for that. And also, I do need to address this because Carlos Ramos saying, what John is not telling you is starting next week, you'll need to upgrade to a premium subscription to access the chat, brought to you by Premier Sports Network. And I will say with certainty, for myself and for Ibby, that will never happen. No. Just to be clear, I know he's joking. I know he puts his little devilish grin in there. And so but I did want to address that because it's coming through in the comments. And that's one of those things where, like, if we don't talk about it, people are going to be like, oh shit, is that real? Could that be real? They didn't talk about it. They saw it and they didn't talk about it. No, this show is always going to stream on YouTube, free of charge, every single week. I promise. We promise. Okay. That's just get that out.
That was a sticking point for us. We always wanted to keep our YouTube. We did not want to ever lose what we started to get when it came to the chat and what it added to the show. We always wanted to make sure that this YouTube community that we're slowly building, we always wanted to keep it because this is where we want to be, and that's where we're going to continue to be.
And of course, it goes without saying for everybody who listens or watches when they can and then listens on other days, the podcast is also going to continue to be free on Apple, on Spotify, on Google, Amazon, all those places that you get your money. Just keep that in mind. I know you were joking, Carlos, but it's just it did need to be said. So that said, Daniel Vogelback, Ibby, I know I have on this show defended the reasonings for keeping Daniel Vogelback. Everybody who's watching right now, I think, is a long-term viewer. And so they know. I don't want to rehash it. Just the whole point is, teams don't like to cut veterans early when they don't have other places to turn. And so, if they go to Vientos and Vientos falters and you have to send him down, now all of a sudden, what are you doing at DH? Is it Danny Mendick? Is it Luis Guillorme? There's not a lot of great places to go, right? That was my argument in a nutshell. Right. So you have to give these guys opportunities. And you look and you see a guy who I thought was going to be on the chopping block first is Tommy Pham. And now Tommy Pham looks like he's not going anywhere. He looks like a competent bench player. That's what Tommy Pham looks like.
Hitting home runs. How many are?
Most of them against lefties, but that's what he's here for. He's here to hit.
You got a job. Yeah.
And I've said the whole time that I do not like Daniel Vogelback on this team, although I was defending him being rostered.
He was not in our ideal lineups.
No, not in our ideal lineups. He's a pinch hitter, but I also said, look, he only makes $1.5 million. He could be a pinch hitter at $1.5 million. Ibby, that is not even a pinch hitter. 165 over a month. 1 home run, 5 RBIs with a 545 OPS out of a guy who is getting the lion's share of reps at DH. That is bad. Daniel Vogelback looks like Darren Ruff right now. He looks like he needs to go. I applauded the Mets for DFAing Tomas Nido, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because I said if you look at the history under Steve Cohen, the Mets have always kept the best 26 people on the roster. There was a lot of talk a couple years ago if Cano was going to take at bats away from Dom Smith. As soon as Dom Smith was able to come back, the Mets cut Cano and $48 million. The Mets kept Darren Ruff around to see if what happened when he came over after the trade was an anomaly, because it was the only time in his career he never hit left-handed pitching. Guess what? His spring training was terrible. They cut him. It didn't matter. You're at the point now with these numbers, you have to cut Daniel Vogelback.
To add on to those numbers, again, shout out to Matthew Brownstein, who, everyone, I am trying very hard to figure out a way to get Matthew on the show. We're working things out, and we're going to eventually get him on the show, which I'm very excited about. But again, shout out to him with this one. Among 47 left-handed hitters in the NL with a minimum of 75 plate appearances against right-handed pitchers since May 1st, he owns the 11th lowest weighted runs created plus with a mark of 67. I often say this on this show. I said at the start of the season that the vets were going to get run, even though many people wanted to start the kids right away. I said, look, the way this team is built, they're going to allow the veterans to come up and see what they can do. And for the most part, they cut bait, if you will, cut bait at proper times when it came to Beatty. Circumstance allowed Alvarez, and now they're both showing out. Beatty's still struggling a little bit, but they're both in the midst of a slump right now. But point is, they showed out and they took over the spots of the vets.
It's also, by the way, just for a second, it's also why I didn't mind Narvaez getting the start yesterday.
Right.
Narvaez is a left-handed hitter. He's not an automatic out like some of the other backups the Mets have had. Alvarez is in a bit of a slump. You're getting Narvaez back. Give him a start.
I think Alvarez is like 1 for his last 15 or something.
I'm not going to get up in arms over that. Guys are going to have to sit every once in a while, but go ahead.
But it's really gotten to the point with Vogelback where it's like, look, if you were getting these starts and providing something, like I know a lot of times you see, and we all know Mets Twitter and Mets Twitter in general accounts for like 7% of the actual population in terms of, who really cares about certain things. So it's not a large number, but the point is people get pissed off when Tommy Pham's in the lineup, and then Tommy Pham goes out there and hits 2 home runs. And you're like, oh, that's great. Awesome. Thank you. He's providing something for the team. So the pitching stopped because he's providing. If Daniel Vogelback was doing that, I don't think the vitriol would be as bad, but he's not. But he's continuously trotted out there as if he's going to get, he's going to bust out of this thing, and it's just not happening, and that's why people are getting so frustrated. It's getting to the point where it's like, yeah, I understand the frustrations, and what bothers me is the doublespeak. I've always said what bothers me when it comes to the doublespeak is when you tell me one thing, and you harp on it, and when you say the kids can't play, they can't be up here because there's not going to be consistent at bats, there's not going to be playing time, and so we want to make sure that they stay low and they're going to get their at bats and they're going to get their reps, and we want to make sure that we don't stunt their development. That's always been the big talking point with this team, right? Well, I'm sorry, but I watched a guy on a consistent basis in AAA hit the shit out of the ball, okay, hit home runs, provide a presence within a lineup. I understand that there is a difference between AAA and the major leagues, but the point is he established himself as respectable. I am not saying that Mark Vientos is going to be the superstar, but he provided something to a lineup. The fact that this man is up here and just collecting dust, essentially, I do not understand the thought process of the entire situation. It doesn't make sense to me. It goes against the things that you were telling me about stunting development and not allowing things because you want them to get their reps. It doesn't equate. And that's what bothers me, because you're saying one thing and then you're doing another. So it doesn't make sense. And that's what really gets under my skin. And I continue to say, like I have for the last month now, I want to see more consistent at-bats for Mark Vientos just to see if he can actually provide something. Otherwise, his team has to go out and get something else.
Well, that's the thing. You nailed it right there. And I'm so happy. Joe DeMeo, PSL The Flushing of the Mets pod, been a guest on this show. Really great Mets content, especially when it comes to the minor leagues.
Yes.
Joe put out a whole thread today on Mark Vientos.
Oh, I didn't see it.
At the end of it, he said the Mets should just be playing him. He's like, I don't know if he's going to be good or not, but the Mets should just be playing him so that they know if they need to get a DH. Yeah. They did this last year, and they had to go give up guys to get Darren Ruff. That's exactly, Ibby, what I said on this show before the trade deadline last year. This was with 100 fewer games in AAA for Mark Vientos.
Yeah.
The Mets were at a point last year where they were getting absolutely nothing from Dom Smith and J.D. Davis out of the DH role. Those guys were DHing most of the time, and they were giving you nothing. Dom Smith famously didn't hit a home run for like 137,000 days, right? You had J.D. Davis, who couldn't hit a fastball. J.D. Davis couldn't hit left-handed pitching. They were not driving in runs. I said, call up Vientos. Worst case scenario, Vientos isn't it. Then you got to go trade for Vogelback or Darren Ruff or whatever anyway, or try to get Josh Bell or whoever else they had conversations with. but maybe he runs with the job. And then it's one less thing you have to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's even bigger now because they're here right now. At the time you and I were screaming this last year, Vientos wasn't on the team. Yeah. Vientos was in AAA. And Vientos had, 75 games of AAA. I don't know. I'm making up the number. I don't know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a full season of AAA at bats. He wasn't doing this like, oh, if you project these numbers over 162 in an MLB season, this is what his numbers would be. He didn't have all that. Now he does. There's nothing left for him to prove at AAA. I don't know if he's going to be good. I don't know if he's going to be trade bait. I don't know if he's going to be a flash in the pan, somebody like Mike Jacobs who comes up and gives you a spark with some home runs, and then he's off the team, and then you never hear from him again 5 years later. I have no idea. That could be Mark Vientos. Yeah, he did get his Carlos.
He got
you know what I'm saying? Like
part of it, yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to be his future. But the bottom line is you have nothing to lose now. Nothing. Yeah, nothing to lose. Because I will bring up these numbers one more time, and I know no one wants to see them, but they are ugly, Ibby. That is your DH. People want to talk, and we don't have the time to even get into it because it's a nonsense commentary. People want to talk about Lindor not being good because he's hitting 213. Lindor plays every day at shortstop and gives you gold glove caliber defense. He's in the top 10 in RBIs. He's like one of, I don't know what it is, 10 shortstops or 8 shortstops in the history of baseball that had like 8 home runs in their team's first 40-something games, driving in these runs. I had the stat up in front of me a moment ago and I lost it. Lindor is an asset, is an asset, is an asset, is an asset. And I know people complain about Vogelback and they're going to complain about Lindor, but Lindor offers you something. If the guy doesn't have a glove and the guy can't run the bases and the guy can't swing the bat or seemingly doesn't want to, and those are his numbers, honestly, I said it and I was like, you don't want to wind up in a situation where Danny Mendick is your DH. You know what? Give me fucking Danny Mendick as your DH. Go get Luis Guillorme out of the minors, put him at second base, put Jeff McNeil in left field, make Eduardo Escobar your DH if you don't want to give the at-bats to Vientos. Give them to anyone else. I am done defending the decision. It has been enough time. It is June 7th. It's not May 7th anymore. It's not May 1st. We're not a month into the season. We're over a third into the season. You have a struggling offense, and you have a guy with these numbers over the last month batting 5th yesterday. 5th. Yeah, I understand Brett Beatty is struggling. I understand Alvarez wasn't playing. I know Marte's not been Marte, and McNeil's not been McNeil. There is plenty of blame to go around, and I have said that all season, that Daniel Vogelback has become the unfair object of everybody's ire. It's no longer unfair.
Yeah, and I think I wish I can credit who said it last night. Maybe it was Carson, who's often in our chat. I'm not sure if it was, or maybe it was Minconi. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on who said it. But the point being was, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback it, like after something happens, like the McNeil error last night or 2 nights ago, if you're listening on audio, of him bobbling the ball 3 times, and then basically the point of the tweet was, imagine. Taking away a very strong second baseman and putting him in the outfield as opposed to at second, so you could put Eduardo Escobar at second instead of allowing Escobar to DH because you want to play Daniel Vogelback. Like, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, and Jeff is usually fine in the outfield, but like it's things like that add up. And to your point, when there's like the comping with Vogelback and Lindor, it's like Lindor provides so much. Vogelback is here for one job. And we've talked about this thousands of times. If you don't provide for that one job, then you don't have a job anymore. Like, that's what it is. Like, you are here for one thing. You're not providing it. I can find someone on this team that can probably do a better job. Or at least I'm willing to try and go through some growing pains with a Mark Vientos if I have to, until he gets those much needed reps, like Beatty needed, like Alvarez needed before they found their groove. Slumps with outstanding right now, but I'd rather that because there's a better end game. Daniel Vogelback is who he is. That's what it comes down to. All right, 60 games into the year. Like I've said, when time was up, when it came to projects and these things that they wanted to see through, it's over. It's done. That it's time to just say thank you. It's you're not playing defense. You're not providing anything else. It's over. I know the guys like him. I'm sure he's a cool guy, fun, whatever. But no, it's over for me. It's done. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. And look, there were a lot of comments coming in while we were doing our thing, and people said, hey, look, Daniel Vogelback's a good cheerleader. I think Keith said, put him with Mr. and Mrs. Met. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of that. And I understand that sentiment. I really do. Like you said, he's probably a good guy, but like Joe K, that's pitcher's numbers at the plate. It is.
It is.
Keith saying Vogelback has become a black hole in the Mets lineup. Give the at-bats to anybody else. Give the at-bats to the beer vendor at this point, from Keith. And Joe K, and then you wouldn't have to see Colin Holderman tear it up with the Pirates. Look, when they gave it up on Colin Holderman, he was having a good year, but he was also not necessarily this guy, right? And I think relievers are fickle, and next year Colin Holderman might be trash. We have no idea. So I don't think that the Mets gave up the second coming of Mariano Rivera for Daniel Vogelback, but it is insult to injury to watch this guy being lights out in the bullpen when we could use help in the bullpen. And the guy that we acquired for him is putting up a 165 batting average over the course of a month plus. So I understand the ire. I really do. It's gotten to a point now where there's no more leash for Daniel Vogelback. And that brings me to this quote from Buck Showalter, where he said he knows how much better he's capable of, and he really wants to help this team win. It hasn't happened for him consistently yet, but he's not the only one. Okay. Again, Ibby, in fairness, he's not the only one. This team has bigger offensive problems than Daniel Vogelback.
Yes.
Jeff McNeil is hitting 280. Last year he hit 320. Starling Marte is not hitting the same way that he was last year.
Yeah.
Francisco Lindor, I love him. I think he's great, but he's not hitting. He's driving in runs, and he's hitting home runs, but he is hitting 216, and it is a lot different than 250 or 260 or 270, where he was at some points last year.
Yeah.
Alonso's been uber productive. He is still hitting 230. So there are blame to go around. But when you look at this quote, and it says he knows how much better he's capable of. Is he, though? Ibby? How much better?
The numbers show what he is.
He's kind of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
he's
there's not
doing
much more that you're going to get.
The only thing is, you want to say he's been a little unlucky on batting average on balls in play. I could give you that. But he's also not swinging enough to justify that.
Right.
Like, I would rather a guy like Daniel Vogelback, I would rather him have, he doesn't play every day, but I'd rather him have 45 strikeouts right now, which would be a ton for the amount of at-bats he has. Because that means he's up there trying to rip the ball. His on-base skill, people critiqued Joey Votto, who's probably going to the Hall of Fame, for taking too many pitches. He was a Gold Glove first baseman who hit third in the order, would hit 300 and hit, 15 to 20 bombs, knock in 100 runs. And people were like, oh, he needs to hit more home runs, so he should swing more than walk more. Plus his on-base percentage was like 425.
Votto's the fucking man.
People are treating Vogelback like he's Joey fucking Votto. He's not. He's like a career 219 hitter.
Yeah, there's a difference there. Yeah, it's plain and simple. It's run its course. I don't know. Like, what's bothering me is I don't know what it's going to take
There's a good point. Carson says he doesn't lift the ball enough to cry about batting average on balls.
Very true.
And that's a fair point.
Very true. I like the point that I'm getting to is like we're all laughing. Like my group chat today, we were laughing. Like the only thing that's consistent about this team is Vogelback playing six or batting six. It's like that's the only thing that's consistent right now, And it's like I want to know when, like the other times, I felt like I had a better idea when it came to Beatty and Alvarez, or more so Beatty because Alvarez was circumstance, but more so with Beatty. Like you saw how things were material. Like I don't know when this leash is finally going to get, reach its end, I should say. Like, I'm very curious as to when they're finally going to say enough is enough and we're done. Like, I really want to know when that's going to, and I can't really pinpoint when it's going to happen.
We have to put this conversation to bed because there's other things we have to talk about, and nobody wants to spend 30 minutes talking about Vogelback. But to your point, here's one thing from Patty in NYC. To get me upset about a player is saying a lot. As far as Buck's comment, no one else is the DH, which is the critical position. And I agree completely with her in that, it's not happening for everybody else. But Pete Alonso goes out there and plays 160 games at first base. Now, no one's going to confuse Alonso at first base with prime Keith Hernandez, but he's made himself into a much better first baseman. So he gives you something. Plus, he's giving you the pop, and he's playing every day. You look at Lindor. Lindor, again, gives you everything I said. You look at McNeil, who is having quietly not really a good season, but it's not a good season for him.
Right.
He's still hitting 280. Now, we expect Jeff McNeil to be, 310, 315, 320. So it's bad for him. Brandon Nimmo is having a very good year, but he also has, a little high strikeout numbers. He's mired in a bad funk right now, but he gives you plus defense in the outfield. There's a lot of stuff where these guys are doing what they're supposed to do. Daniel Vogelback's job is to hit. If you want to say his job is to get on base, like you and I have argued, I'll give you that. But he's also not getting on base enough either.
Nope.
And then when he gets on base, he's a logjam. And so, the time has come for him. It's just anybody else till Vogelback do us part. Stevie Mac, yes. That is the new name of the show. Keith Blacknick said earlier, because of the writer's strike and the SAG strike, we might need a third host and he'll have some free time if we want him to come on. Listen, if things keep going this way, we're going to have a third host. It's going to be Daniel Vogelback because this guy's going to be out of friggin' baseball. But the other part of it is, Ibby, and this will be my last point on this.
Yeah.
And it kind of, Patty's point brought me to this and everything you said. Dude, we're not talking about Robinson Cano. And I know Robinson Cano's tenure here was bad. But before the steroids, Robinson Cano was going to the Hall of Fame. If you want to bring up this quote, he knows how much better he's capable of and really wants to help this team win. It hasn't happened for him consistently yet, but he's not the only one. If you're telling me that that's 37-year-old Robinson Cano, okay. If it's May 15th and you're telling me that about Robinson Cano, or you're telling me that about, I don't know, if the Mets would have went out and got Jose Abreu, who's not having a good year, and he was their DH, and you want to put up this quote, Buck wants to come out and say this about Jose Abreu.
Right. You got to have a track record.
It's Daniel fucking Vogelback.
Yeah.
Look at the back of his baseball card. This is who he is. That's what's confounding to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's coaches speak. I don't know if Vogelback loves him. I don't know if Epler loves him. I don't know if they're just so petrified to give Vientos at bats. I don't know what it is, Ibby, but you can't, and I like Buck, but you can't keep saying this. It's you can't. That's brutal. That's fucking brutal.
Yeah, it's look, Buck is someone that knows how to handle media, knows how to speak when he gets a tough question, and he says things and he can dance his way out of things, and he does it with a smile and he gets a laugh. And look, I have the look again, I still stand on my proverbial soapbox, and I say that a manager's job in today's baseball is to just be competent when it comes to handling media. For the most part, Buck does that. But when it comes to this defending of a player of this caliber, that's where I have an issue, because you do have options here. You're just choosing not to utilize them. Whether that's him, whether that's Epler, the front office, the analytics, whatever it may be. I'm not sure, but yeah, hearing things like that just doesn't work. That's that right there. That's losing baseball. That is.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got David saying he also said that players need to get their fair share of playing time, yet Vientos is rotting on the bench. Sorry, I think that's hypocrisy.
Double speak. I agree.
And I agree with that. I
Double
do.
Speak. I said it before.
You know, Keith saying if this was beer league softball, Vogelback would be getting a pinch runner if he got on base. And I know that's harsh, but that's true. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to offer you anything. So I just look, I don't know when this experiment is over, but it's got to end soon. Patty in NYC, it is absolute BS to say Vogie isn't the only inconsistent when everyone else has OPS. I love Buck because he backs his guys. So I wonder who Vogie is sleeping with. Yeah, I don't know. Let's get into what will probably be our final topic, and it's an offshoot of that. Yeah. The Mets DFA Tomas Nido. Mm-hmm. I think it was the right move.
I agree.
People were calling him into semantics, my tweet, because I said he was a bad baseball player. And they're like, hey, well, he's a good defensive catcher. He's, to this point, it's not even a better defensive catcher than Francisco Alvarez. So I'm not sure why you're carrying him on the team. It was more my point. It was hyperbole, right? Tomas Nido seems like a wonderful person, but I think the Mets handled the catching situation as best as they possibly could. Agreed. Honestly. I liked everything they did from start to finish. The only thing they have to do now, Ibby, is not fumble the bag. I think Omar Narvaez is a good offensive catcher, and I think he's the kind of guy that you could play if Alvarez is in a slump. I think he's the kind of guy that you could play if you've got a matchup where you want to get a lefty bat out there. And I think he's the kind of guy that you're not going to lose a ton. Obviously, he doesn't give you the pop, but you're not going to lose a ton of offensive would-be production if you've got to give Alvarez the regular days off that catchers get. So I think they made the 100% the right move, but I do not want to see this be a 50-50 split. I'm sorry. It can't be.
No,
Alvarez has to be the first. And I said earlier in the show, I had no problem with Narvaez getting the start yesterday, given everything that Alvarez has done, played a lot in a slump, pitching again, playing against a right-handed pitcher, give the lefty the at bat. Like, I have no beef with that, but this can't be a 50-50 split.
No, you don't go 50-50 here. This needs to be what I said last week. I said it needed to be 5-2. If like minimum, like 5 on, 2 off, 6 and 1 even for Alvarez, protecting off of, like you said, long withstanding slumps or even or day games after night games. Like I get spots like that, but for the most part, this should be 5-2, 6-1. Like, the kid's come up. He's proven his worth. He provides a spark. I know Narvaez can hit the ball out of the park too, but I think Alvarez has light tower power. Like that's what this lineup needs. And I know I can't remember who said it in the comments before about the comfortability of us with the idea of Alvarez being the one that protects Alonso. Look, if you want to bet Alvarez 5, I'm all for it. If you want to bat him 2, I'm all for it. Like, I think he's proven that he has the wherewithal to thrive in spots like that. You just got to allow him to do it. So no, 50-50, no shot. 5-2, 6-1. That's really what it should be in a given week.
Keith saying Alvarez is the future. It's an 80-20 split for the catchers. That's exactly what I would do. It's absolutely what it needs to be. Yeah. I saw that comment too, and I would scroll up, but I don't want to find it. So shout out to whoever said it. If you want to throw your name in that it was you, we'll give you the shout out. But yeah, I have no problem with Alvarez hitting 5th. In my ideal lineup, he probably hits 6th just because I do like going left, right. I'm not as obsessed with it as Buck is, but I do like doing that because I do think it provides a difficult matchup when you're bringing in relief pitchers, and relief pitchers have to pitch to 3 batters minimum. You know what I mean? I think when you do that, you get, not every bullpen has good crossover guys. So I think it does ever since that rule became official, I think going lefty righty as much as you can, if you're not sacrificing too much, is okay. So for me, I would go Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Alonso, Beatty, Alvarez. But if you want to flip flop and put Alvarez in the 5, I got no beef with that. If you want to put Alvarez at 2 when he's hitting and other people aren't, I have no beef with that. Because look, again, McNeil hasn't been McNeil. Lindor hasn't been getting on base a ton. Obviously, Marte has lost his spot for the time being in the 2 hole. So, you can go and get creative, put him at 2. I'm all fine with that. I'm fine with any of it. I'm honestly fine even in the right lineup, in the right situation. I don't care if he hits 9th because he does have people protecting him. He does have the lineup turnover. I mind when he hits 9th and you got Mark Canha hitting 6th and Daniel Vogelback hitting 5th. Then I care about Alvarez hitting 9th. I don't care if Alvarez hits 9th if you've got other people in front of him because it's just the lineup's just deep and it turns over. It's like the Yankee lineups in the 90s. It didn't matter who was hitting 9th. Yeah. Somebody was always coming up, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, Jeter, boom, Williams, boom, O'Neill, Cano, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
So I don't care. But I do care when you have guys who are career middle-of-the-road players hitting in front of him. Then I care. So, yeah, and David saying that it was him asking about the 5th. So,
thank you, David. Thank you. Yeah, it's just we need to realize that where we are in the season, that this team needs to really, I don't want to say lean on, but just allow yourself. I think their thought process, and again, this is what I think a thought process is, not what I am wanting the thought process to be. I want to make sure that that's clear. I'm assuming that the thought process might be something along the lines of, if we lean on the kids and they fail and then we keep on falling out, it's going to make things even harder and then not giving the vets the reps that they need to allow them to get these things accomplished. It's going to make coming back even harder. So they want to play this back and forth game. It's like, trust the kids, allow them to actually go out there and get some consistent playing time and allow them to try and thrive. Like, that's what needs to happen here. That's why we need Francisco Alvarez playing 5 days of the week, 6 days of the week. That's why we need Brett Beatty out there every single day. That's why we need to see Mark Vientos getting more consistent at-bats. Righty, lefty, doesn't matter from the DH spot. And then eventually, withstanding when it comes to his ankle and how things go with Ron Mauricio, him eventually getting called up here potentially as well, unless he's dealt away. We'll see how that all shakes out based off the injury. But you have to give these kids playing time. It has to happen.
Yeah, Douglas Barnes saying, I do care. 9th could be somebody like Canha. And just to clarify my viewpoint there, it's kind of similar to what I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, with Jeff McNeil. It's about the personnel on the team. Right. So yeah, I think Canha should bat 9th with the people we have now. That's what I mean. If for some reason, and I know he hasn't had a good year, if the Mets signed Carlos Correa and Marte was having a Marte year and Lindor was doing what Lindor does and McNeil's on the team and they have an injury at catcher and they have to call up Alvarez and all of a sudden, your lineup is Nimmo doing what he does, then Marte, then Lindor, then Alonso, then Correa, then McNeil. If you're talking about that, and I know I'm just making up this scenario, yeah, then Alvarez can hit 9th. It's fine. But yes, as this is currently constructed, somebody like Canha is more suited to hit 9th. Pham, when he plays, dare I say it, Vogelback, when he plays, these are the kinds of people that could hit 9th and should be hitting 9th, not Francisco Alvarez. I honestly don't even think, dude, Omar Narvaez is not a catcher that should hit 9th. Tomas Nido 9th, sure. Michael Perez 9th,
right.
Sure.
Right.
Fine. But
I can't stand, I've seen enough, especially from Alvarez and Beatty. Like, I want to see more from Vientos, but I've seen enough from them where I don't need to see the coddling anymore. I've always been someone that has been of the mindset, you sink or swim. You got to go out there and just allow them to be. They are highly touted for a reason. This guy was the number 1 prospect in baseball, for Christ's sake. Okay, at the catcher position, which is not the norm. So again, yes, those things are subjective, but that doesn't matter. Point is, he's highly touted. He's here. He's proven his worth. Slumping now, whatever, doesn't matter. Happens in baseball, ebbs and flows. Let him go out there, let him play every day. Put him up in the lineup, put him in spots where it matters. Doesn't matter. Stop the coddling. Just fucking go. That's
Honestly, this comment from Carlos Ortiz is a good way to split the difference. I don't know if they would do this every day, but it's not the most egregious thing I've ever seen. Put Vientos ninth.
Yeah, if you're so worried about him, put him ninth.
If you're so worried about him, put him ninth. DH him every day for a week, for 10 days, whatever, regardless of matchups, lefty, righty, and just hit him ninth. And you know what? Hit Alvarez eighth. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, do something. And this is not getting aggravated over the lineup on a daily basis. This is getting aggravated over the lineup as it's constructed, Ibby. Try something, because they're not scoring enough runs. They're not pitching when they need to pitch, and they're not hitting when they need to hit. I do think eventually I think the pitching was the biggest problem this season so far.
It's been self-correcting.
I think it's going to correct itself more and more as guys get healthier and settled in. Even Cookie Carrasco, listen, 5 innings pitched plus 4 earned runs out of your number 5 starter against the lineup like the Braves after he comes off of 2 quality starts. I'm taking that from my 5th starter.
I will say though, stupid, absolutely stupid to put him out there the 3rd time through, and they paid for it. It was stupid. That was dumb.
Yes, I saw somebody. I think it was I don't remember who it was, saying the decision to put in Drew Smith, it might have been Keith, using him in a high leverage situation. Look, you can't use these guys. You got to use guys when you can use them, right? You can't go to Ottavino there in the 6th, because then who pitches the 8th, right? But I agree with you, Ibby. I think if you give Drew Smith a clean inning, the chances of them tying up that game, if you give Drew Smith a clean inning, are lesser, obviously.
Simple, real quick, because I need to say, because I was shocked when I saw it. Drew Smith, I know you're a big-time listener. I know you listen to the show, Drew. The fastball, your fastball, Drew Smith, is very special into the fact that it's pitching, or it's producing an average of 111 against your fastball. Yet every time we watch you blow a game, it's because you're hanging a slider. I'm not saying that I am a pitching guru. I'm just saying trust your stuff. Now, again, this is between catcher, pitcher, pitching coach, whatever it may be. I just think it's alarming that in big spots, specifically when he's mixing in a slider to almost act as an out pitch, I think it's improper, because the fastball is getting a 111 average and the slider is getting a 462 average. 462.
He is
Jesus Christ.
Most of the time, he is a 1-inning pitcher.
And I like Drew Smith.
I do too.
Christ,
I think
man.
Drew Smith is a quality relief pitcher. I don't think he's an elite relief pitcher.
No,
I don't think
he's a fine guy in the pen. That's it.
He's a good guy to have in middle relief. And a lot of teams don't have good guys in middle relief. And so when you look at Drew Smith's career ERA in like the low to mid 3s, that's good. I'll take that in middle relief. My point is, he is a 1-inning pitcher 9 times out of 10. You can get away with throwing 1 pitch. And I know that's an exaggeration, but you can come in. If that 1 pitch is lively, Ibby, you can throw a 10-pitch, 12-pitch inning where you're just throwing fastballs and locating it. Especially when your fastball has life and you come in on the back of a guy like Carrasco, who you throw much harder than.
Yes.
That first inning, that guys see you, they're going to be shell-shocked by your fastball. Now, nobody's going to confuse Drew Smith with Aroldis Chapman. No,
but still, there's a difference
Edwin
between
Diaz,
92 and 98. There's a difference.
And he's got a lively one. So, I just think it's a strange. He's not a guy like Ottavino. With Ottavino, he's got that slider. He lives and dies by the slider. When it's on, it's great. When it's off, you hope that he just walks some people and then gets out of it and he doesn't hang one and give up a bomb. But that's his bread and butter. That's the kind of pitcher he is. Drew Smith should be a fastball guy. And it's frustrating that he's not. Anyway, we're in the weeds. We're at an hour 10. Maybe we should wrap this up so that we can all settle in. So we can all settle in for Mets baseball. Hopefully they win. Okay. Final thoughts before we go. This has been a weird episode.
It's been a weird episode. I needed
very cathartic for me, though.
Very cathartic, as always. We want this to be our classic Mets therapy session. I think this was a needed session for sure. I said last time that I wanted to see, the pitching get better. And wrap
From
it
Chappelle's
up.
show. You better wrap that gavel up, B.
No, but I said to end last show, my closing thought was I wanted to see the pitching do better over the week span before we recorded again. And I thought that the pitching was better. It's just like the offense outside of the Senga start, which was a rough one. But yeah, for the most part, the pitching was fine. Better than what we've seen. It's the offense that's just not providing for the pitching. If the pitching gives up 3 runs, like, you should be able to win a game. You shouldn't be losing 3-0, things like that. So I'm going to say I'm hoping that I'm going to ask for a lot here. I'm hoping that over the next week we start to see a little bit of a mojo, a little bit of a rhythm with the offense along with the pitching. Can we please get to a point where everything clicks, where it's not 1 works and then 2 don't, or then 2 work and then 1 don't. Let's get a week where everything clicks, where the offense is scoring some runs, where the starting pitching goes 6 strong or 7 strong, whatever it may be, depending on who's on the mound, and the bullpen shuts the door. I would love to see that, 5 times in a given week. I would like to see that once this season so far. We're a quarter of the way through, or whatever we are through, 61 games through. I want to finally see that. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a good comment there from Patty about Senga and his potential adjustment to pitching every 5th day and how it's unfair to the rest of the rotation. I didn't ignore that. Patty saw it. We're kind of running out of time, and it's a lot to get into. I also, in the interest of fairness, would like to see at least one more turn through the rotation as he does adjust to that. So I think that's going to be a topic of conversation next week, and perhaps even the week after, before we can kind of really dive into it. I'm not going to judge the guy off of his first foray into pitching on quote unquote short rest for him, but what is regular rest in the major leagues. So we'll talk about that hopefully next week. Maybe the week after, we'll see how it goes. Let him build up a little bit of a sample size. Douglas Barnes saying, Vogelback grand slam tonight. Next, the Mets Hall of Fame. There he goes. Do want to shout out everybody who got into the Mets Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Before we get out of here. Of course, Gary Cohen, Howie Rose, 2 illustrious, unbelievably great, commentators, 2 of the best in the biz. Ibby, my co-host, is going to be interviewing Howie Rose at the QBC lunch with Howie Rose. You guys, you gotta go to that. The QBC is an awesome event. Anything that they do is wonderful. Keith and Dan and everybody put on an unbelievable event for Met fans. It is basically the Mets fan fest. So you should absolutely go do that. And then, of course, shout out to Al Leiter, who I think is unbelievably underrated Met because they didn't win a World Series. If the Mets won the World Series in 2000, I think Al Leiter would have been in a lot sooner in that Mets Hall of Fame. He had a great career as a Met. And then Hojo, can't leave him out. Somebody who did win a World Series, somebody with multiple 30-30 seasons for the Mets, and was a guest on this show, and a very, very, very nice man. So shout out to Hojo as well. All 4 well-deserved individuals.
Well-deserved.
And finally, do have to say, it's really shitty what happened to Jacob deGrom. For everybody, all the Mets fans, the baseball fans. Look, I know I joked at the QBC, as a matter of fact. I think it was the day after deGrom signed with Texas. I said, hey, the only 48 we acknowledge is Glendon Rush, right? I get that. I understand that he spurned us a bit, Ibby, but nobody wants to see a guy go out like that, really. Like, it's an absolute bummer that deGrom is not pitching. Baseball is better when he is pitching, regardless of who he's pitching for.
It's the one tweet I'll put out. I'll just leave that as my final thing here. It's baseball in general is better when Jacob deGrom hits that mound every 5th day. He's a special talent. He's a special player. And I think that losing him for a year sucks. But the one thing I will say, as everyone seems to be writing him off, I am not, because if there's one thing I know and Mets fans know, the last time you saw Jacob deGrom crying, he went on the run of a lifetime. You saw Jacob deGrom cry yesterday in a post game talking about what had happened to him, and he was clearly broken up about it. Says, I'm going to be back. I believe that he will be back, and I wish him all the best.
I do. And then just real quick, I know I keep saying we got to get out of here, but Shay saying final thoughts. John Sapanaro for DH. Let the kid play. Can't be any worse, honestly. Ibby would probably be a better choice, but still, either one of us can't be worse than Vogelback. Carlos Ortiz saying, will Ibby's interview be posted on YouTube? And Keith saying, 99% sure I will run it on the Queens Baseball Convention YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to because there is a lot of great past stuff on it, which you can go check out now, including, I think, probably some of the stuff I've done. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this show. Went a little bit long, started a little bit late. But there was a lot to get to, a lot of stuff to talk about, weird vibes with everything going on in New York and all this stuff. But everybody stay safe. Everybody be good. We will join you as we always do live on YouTube and live on Twitter next week here in this same spot. And of course, if you can't listen to the show or can't watch the show, be sure to listen to the show starting tomorrow, courtesy of the Premier Podcast Network. Hit that thumbs up on the way out. I think it helps. I'm not sure, but I'm told by people younger than me that it helps. So we will see you guys next time. Peace.